The fine arrived taped to my door like a threat, bold, official, and smug, and it said my decorations violated community standards and would cost me $500 unless removed immediately, which was funny because my yard had lights, inflatables, and painted props that neighbors stopped to admire, not some dangerous eyesore. I stared at the notice and felt that familiar HOA chill, the kind that says someone decided control matters more than joy. This wasn't my first warning. Karen, the self-appointed rule enforcer 2 houses down, had complained before about chalk drawings and holiday music. Today, she went nuclear. The letter claimed my decorations were excessive, distracting, and thematic, as if fun were contagious. I could pay the fine, quietly comply, and return to beige normalcy, or I could read the rules. So I did. Late into the night, I pored over bylaws, subsections, and footnotes, discovering something Karen missed. Decorations were allowed year-round if safely installed and not blocking sidewalks. Mine qualified. The fine was bogus. That's when annoyance turned to inspiration. If she hated a few decorations, what would she do when the entire block leaned in? I sketched ideas, not to provoke, but to comply loudly. I imagined zones, paths, and themes, lights that guided foot traffic, signs explaining safety, and displays that celebrated seasons, movies, and imagination. I would follow every rule, then exceed expectations. The next morning, neighbors asked about the notice. I told them the truth. Their eyes lit up. Kids cheered. Adults laughed. Someone said, "Make it bigger." That was the spark. I didn't argue with Karen. I thanked her, because the fine gave me permission to dream, to transform compliance into spectacle, and to build something unforgettable. By dusk, the first lights went up, and as they flickered on, I realized this wasn't about decorations anymore. It was about reclaiming space, inviting wonder, and showing how joy survives bureaucracy. Karen wanted silence. I planned an attraction. And if she tried to stop me, the rules would be my ride operator, my ticket, and my shield, because nothing scares control like happiness done right. This was only the beginning, and the gate was about to open. Neighbors offered help, supplies, and time, turning curiosity into momentum, while group chats formed overnight, sharing schedules, ideas, and snacks. I felt nerves, excitement, and responsibility, knowing attention magnifies every choice. I triple-checked measurements, permits, and clearances, mapped walkways, and planned crowd flow to keep sidewalks open. If this was going to happen, it would be safe, welcoming, and undeniably compliant, the kind of fun that exposes how petty complaints crumble under preparation, kindness, and transparency, because rules protect communities best when people actually read them together first. By the end of that week, my yard looked less like a rebellion and more like a construction site with purpose, because every decoration I added followed a checklist, not a whim. I measured distances from sidewalks, staked down cords, labeled circuits, and posted clear safety signs, all things the bylaws encouraged but no one ever bothered to do. Neighbors noticed the care immediately. Instead of complaints, I got questions. Is it okay if my kids walk through? Can we help? Are you doing themes? The answers were yes, yes, and yes. Karen noticed too. She hovered near her mailbox, phone raised, documenting every new prop like evidence. She sent another email to the HOA, warning them I was escalating. This time, the reply went to the entire board, and it asked for specifics. Karen couldn't provide any. There were no blocked sidewalks, no noise violations, no safety hazards. The rules were on my side, and she knew it. That weekend, the first theme opened, a gentle, family-friendly walk-through celebrating seasons, with painted backdrops, soft lighting, and interactive buttons kids could press to trigger sounds. Nothing loud. Nothing flashing. Just wonder. Parents stood back smiling. Kids pointed and laughed. Someone brought hot cocoa. Another neighbor added a bench. The yard stopped being mine and started being ours. The HOA sent a representative to observe. He walked the path, nodded at the signs, checked clearances, and thanked me for keeping it organized. Karen watched from across the street, arms crossed, realizing the narrative had flipped. This wasn't chaos. It was community. As word spread, visitors trickled in from nearby blocks. I added directional arrows to keep traffic flowing and a small sign asking people to respect neighbors' driveways. Compliance became part of the charm. Each new addition came with documentation, photos, and notes I uploaded to the HOA portal, daring anyone to argue. By Sunday night, the yard had a name the kids gave it, and a skidoo. By the second week, the yard no longer surprised people, it organized them. Families arrived at predictable times, strollers lined up neatly, and volunteers rotated shifts to guide visitors through the paths. I posted hours, rules, and a friendly reminder to keep noise down. The structure mattered. It showed respect, and respect disarmed critics. Even the skeptics admitted it felt thoughtful, not disruptive. Karen escalated anyway. She filed a formal appeal demanding enforcement, claiming the attraction reduced property values and encouraged trespassing. The HOA scheduled a hearing. This was her moment, and she treated it like court. She brought printed photos, highlighted passages, and a practice speech about order. I brought binders, measurements, permits, emails, sign-in sheets, testimonials from neighbors who lived closest to me, all saying the same thing. It was safe, quiet, and welcome. The board listened longer than usual. Questions came, not accusations. How many visitors? How late? What safety measures? I answered calmly. When Karen interrupted, the chair reminded her to wait. That silence felt new. It felt earned. The board recessed, and neighbors squeezed my shoulder, whispering encouragement. The decision came back unanimous. No violation found. The fine was rescinded. The appeal denied. Outside, Karen confronted me, saying I'd turned the street into a circus. I replied that circuses are regulated, insured, and beloved, then wished her a good night. The crowd laughed softly, not at her, but at the tension finally breaking. She walked away, smaller than before. That weekend, the next theme opened, brighter and bolder, with painted facades and timed lighting that glowed without blinding. A local paper snapped photos. A community group asked about accessibility. We added ramps and seating. Each improvement made the argument weaker. Each smile made it harder to complain. I realized then that the yard had become a mirror. It reflected what people brought to it. Curiosity became delight. Control became cooperation. And fear, when faced with preparation and kindness, lost its grip. Karen wanted to draw a line. Instead, she revealed it. On one side stood rules used as weapons. On the other stood rules used as rails, guiding joy forward without crashing into anyone. The choice was obvious to everyone watching. That clarity shifted conversations everywhere. Neighbors planned together, shared resources, and checked on one another. Complaints faded into logistics, and logistics became invitations. The yard kept evolving, but the spirit stayed steady, patient, and open. I slept better, knowing preparation was my defense and generosity my answer. If Karen tried again, she'd meet facts, faces, and a community that learned its strength together. Momentum replaced fear, and fear no longer dictated behavior, schedules, or joy for anyone nearby. Not anymore, not here, not tonight. Ever again. Period. After the hearing, the HOA shifted tactics, because losing publicly tends to make control seekers subtler, not wiser. An email went out praising community creativity, while introducing a draft proposal for visual harmony guidelines. It wasn't a ban, but it smelled like one. The language was vague, filled with phrases like cohesive appearance and neighborhood balance, and it invited feedback. Karen took that invitation as a victory lap, telling anyone who'd listen that the fun was about to end. Instead, the neighborhood showed up, the comment thread filled with thoughtful responses. People suggested clarity instead of restriction, safety standards instead of aesthetics, flexibility instead of fear. Parents shared how their kids finally felt welcomed outside. Seniors talked about evening walks turning into conversations. Someone even asked if the HOA could support more shared spaces. The proposal stalled under the weight of real voices. Meanwhile, the yard transformed again, not louder, but smarter. Timed lighting reduced glare. Clear entrances kept flow smooth. A simple map helped visitors choose paths. We added a donation jar for local causes and posted receipts online. Transparency disarmed suspicion. Care invited trust. Karen tried one last angle. She reported traffic. I added volunteers with reflective vests and posted parking guidance. She complained about noise. I adjusted hours earlier and added signage. Each complaint became an upgrade. Each upgrade made the case weaker. It was exhausting, but effective. Compliance wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Then the HOA asked to meet. Not to stop me, but to learn. They wanted to understand how something private had become so positive without breaking rules. I explained the planning, the documentation, the community input. They nodded, took notes, and asked if I'd help draft clearer guidelines that protected creativity. Karen didn't attend, the shift was unmistakable. The HOA stopped reacting and started listening. Neighbors stopped waiting for permission and started collaborating. The yard wasn't a threat anymore, it was a template. People talked about block picnics, shared gardens, and seasonal walks. The fear of fines faded into curiosity about what was possible that night. As the lights dimmed and families waved goodbye, I felt something settle. The conflict had done its work. It had forced choices, clarified values, and revealed how quickly joy grows when people are trusted. Karen's silence was loud, but it no longer mattered. The story had outgrown her. What began as a fine had become a framework. And the next step would make that framework permanent, not as rules, but as relationships strong enough to withstand the next complaint, whenever it came. The season turned, and with it came the moment everyone wondered about. Would the yard shut down, scale back, or quietly fade now that the spotlight had cooled? The answer arrived not with noise, but with consistency. The themes rotated. The path stayed clear. The lights stayed warm. The rules stayed followed. What had once been an act of defiance had become a rhythm the neighborhood relied on, like porch lights at dusk or trash cans rolling out on Tuesdays. The HOA finalized its guidelines, and they read nothing like Karen's wish list. Clear safety standards, defined hours, simple language, no aesthetic bans, no vague clauses. They even added a line encouraging seasonal displays and community creativity. I read it twice, smiling at how ordinary it sounded. That was the point. When joy becomes normal, it stops being threatening. Karen still lived 2 houses down. She still avoided eye contact. But she stopped complaining. The fines never returned. The emails dried up. Control lost interest when it stopped working. What replaced it was something steadier. Neighbors took turns contributing ideas. Teens volunteered for setup. Parents coordinated schedules. Seniors shared stories with visitors. The yard wasn't mine anymore in the way it once was. It belonged to the block. One evening, a family from another neighborhood asked how it all started. I told them the truth. A fine. A choice. A decision to read the rules and build within them. They nodded, understanding more than the word said. Because everyone knows that moment when compliance feels like a cage until you realize it can be a key. Looking back, the theme park was never about spectacle. It was about permission. Permission to take up space thoughtfully. Permission to invite others without fear. Permission to treat rules as guardrails instead of weapons. Karen tried to shrink the world to her comfort. The neighborhood chose to expand it with care. On the last night of the season, we dimmed the lights earlier than usual. People lingered anyway, saying goodbye, promising to return next year. Someone taped a thank you note to the gate. Another left a bag of bulbs for future displays. I locked up, walked the paths once more, and felt gratitude settle in. The yard would change again. The seasons always do. But the lesson stayed put. Joy doesn't need permission from fear. It needs preparation, patience, and people willing to stand together. A fine tried to end that. Instead, it built something lasting, and if another notice ever appears on my door, I know exactly what to do. Read. Plan. Invite. Keep the gates open. If you love HOA revenge stories, hit subscribe and don't miss the next one.